about how you guys feel at this point about the idea that he is killed. Like, do you feel like that's more or less likely than when you saw it at the time? Because I was watching it again, and I'm like, okay, there's the members-only jacket guy who's clearly, as you said, their choices have been made to focus our attention to him.
Well, and we also have the unidentified black males that he looks at who also,
And a guy in a USA Truckers hat and a little Cub Scout pack. Like, did a Weebelo sneak up and garrot him? This could be anything. They did cut away to those
There is
Cub
a patch
Scouts,
for
like
that.
right, yeah.
The Whack the Mob Boss patch that you get, yeah.
Like a little patron saint with blood drops on it.
Yeah.
It's a bear.
Well, and that's
I'm open to the possibility if Jay says this is what happened, I'd be like,
well, but that's another.
That wasn't my read, but I accept it.
The scenario that you
guys
describe
accept
as an alternate is also another pervasive reading of the ending, which is that Tony's punishment is to be Tony, and part of being Tony is knowing that at any moment somebody could kill you, or kill your family, and
he's waiting for a process server. Everyone forgets this last plot point that Neil makes. Like, here we are with his ketchup bottle.
Yes, yeah.
That the blood won't come out if you want to go there.
Yeah, but and I love it. To me, that was a laugh. That was like a laugh moment. That's the Sopranos in a nutshell. Is that you're sitting there trying to get the ketchup to come out of the bottle, and it won't come out of the bottle because it's a Sopranos. They're not going to let the ketchup come out.
That's what I love about the ending. The fact that it's so ambiguous. That's why we're talking about it so many years later. How disinteresting would it have been if we knew definitively how this show actually ended? You say, that you wrote that David Chase whacked the viewer. He's also whacking expectations, and that's something that's pervasive throughout the entire show. Yeah. Building something up and having it actually deflate before it can actually arise.
Well, and look at how he handled the Richie April plot line in season 2. It was the same kind of thing. We're sitting there expecting that Tony and Richie will come to blows or something, and Richie will die. Richie will die at the hands of Tony, or at the hands of one of Tony's people, and in fact, it's Janice who kills him. And it doesn't even happen at the end of the season. It's so shocking because you just don't expect it. There's like 5 or 6 different ways in which you don't expect it, and it feels like an anticlimax. And actually, when it happened, I was at first kind of annoyed. I was kind of annoyed because it reminded me of one of those movies, like one of those action films that are very promiscuous in how many of their major characters they kill, just to show you that no one is safe.
Yeah.
But it seems the perfectly appropriate ending and for that plot line, and it's a Sopranos way to end it. Mm-hmm. It seems very logical.
That's actually. Oh, I'm sorry.
The idea of playing with expectations, playing against expectations. Is this actually what you want? And Chase has never explained what the ending was about, but and he articulated this in Alan Sepinwall's recent book, which is like the number of people who actually were calling for Tony's head seemed to surprise him. But this is something that he actually felt a little bit annoyed by, if not disgusted by. Like, you fought all this along, and now you've cheered for him.
Right.
Just by the nature of his role as the main, he's the lead of the show. He's not necessarily the hero of the show.
He's the main character.
He's the main character. So there were sympathies.
We see his dreams. We don't see if you see somebody's dreams, they're the main character.
They're the main character. So the desire for bloodshed in the end was something that maybe he was consciously trying to avoid, make a comment on with that cut. It's possible. But again, all these expectations are almost external to the show.
Right.
That if you look at the show in a nutshell, something like the end of Lost, if you don't hear Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse talk about the ending of the show for 3 years, are you surprised? Are you disappointed by season 6? How are people going to visit this down the line? I'll be very curious for people who visit the end of the show after having seen Lost, maybe Breaking Bad, Mad Men, how these shows end, how they react to The Sopranos, and then go back through the prism of all that to The Sopranos. Are they going to have the same reaction? I don't think they will.
They can.
They
but
can't.
then, the opposite extreme is the way that Cheers ended, which is one by one, all the major characters leave the bar, and it ends with Sam turning the lights out.
Yep, we're closed.
And it's kind of the opposite of a big ending. It's in a weird way. It's kind of like if you could sort of draw it on a scale that I guess connects. The end of The Sopranos butts up against the end of Cheers in that way, because it's the takeaway that I get from it is show's over, folks. You don't get to watch anymore.
Well, I just got a little chill when you said we're closed. Like, that was just the perfect ending for that show.
It was.
Felt that, like, we needed to just wrap everything up and definitively say, like, this is what's happening and this is where they're moving on to or not from here. The Sopranos, I think, was a perfect ending for that show, particularly given that I think David Chase grew more and more conflicted about his own relationship with Tony
Mhm.
as the years went on. I think it was pretty black and white for him in early seasons, but as it became this like cultural Godzilla, and he's adding on seasons that I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think in his sort of like dream conception of the show, it wasn't whatever 6.5
Right.
seasons. And by the time it got to that point and he had all these expectations on him, I think that was the only ending he personally, as the creator, could do.
Yeah.
And I gotta come out and just say, you know, I don't know if I'm just in the minority here. Maybe it's the way I've been trained to receive stories or think about storytelling, but I do feel like, I don't know if any of you have read Stephen King's series of novels, The Dark Tower.
Mhm.
And I loved it. I thought he was trying out a lot of interesting narrative strategies, and some of them didn't work. But it was this grand experiment that he clearly, personally meant a lot to him. And so it was so personally infused with love for the world and the characters that I'm not giving anything at all away to say that the ending wasn't an ending. But I felt so satisfied by the journey that I was okay with it. I thought, you know what? This was all you could do. And, you know, props to you for having given me a lot of pleasure over 2,000 pages.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So with The Sopranos, though, I have to say I can understand that choice on an intellectual level.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, honestly, emotionally, I wasn't satisfied by it. It does feel like an evasion. And it does feel like ripping the scab off, when I would have much rather you have just like given me a little pat on the arm and said, now I'm going to rip the scab off. I didn't get that. And I
Not very Chase-like, though.
Well, but Chase,
Yeah.
that is his thing. That is
I'm
absolutely
sure
his
that
choice.
was suggested in the writer's room, and he like literal hives. began to so, like the
Chase
idea
is
of like
not-
a sort
yeah.
of, what is this called? This like
Iris?
going to, yes, down to
Yeah.
that they do it in The Sting like 15 times.
Yeah.
And like that
He-
I'm
Very
sure
Woody
someone
Allen-esque,
suggested
yeah.
it
You
and
know-
was like, and he's like,
He's not at all sentimental. I realize that I have this really strong streak of sentimental. Let's go around the horn and make sure
Yeah.
everybody's okay. You know,
Well, that's what narrative is for,
The
is to
series
wrap
finale of
things
Friday Night
up.
Lights was like that's, you know, that kind of thing. It was too tidy for Friday Night Lights, but you
Yeah.
know, I really cared about those people. So I get it intellectually, and as a piece of aesthetic filmmaking, I can understand it, but I did want something different. But you know, it's his right to make his show and make his statement about what he thought of our experience of that show and how it should end.